Hi, Randy.
Hi.
So this is the format of an interview for today. Je vais parler en français et en anglais et je vais en fait interviewer Randy sur son expérience. Randy, as a provost of PhilIU on the East Coast, as the provost of one of the most famous design schools in the East Coast, and now you've moved on the West Coast as the VP of Education Experience at Autodesk. What is your feeling about the differences between the East and the West Coast with this word, how to disseminate design thinking?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly that I would make that distinction between East Coast and West Coast. I'd look more...
One thing, I'm just going to say it in French.
Okay.
Donc, je lui pose en fait la question que comme il a été provost de deux universités sur la côte Est, Parsons School et PhilIU, et que maintenant il est sur la côte Ouest comme VP Education à Autodesk, et y a-t-il en fait des différences et est-ce qu'il peut sentir en fait des différences dans à la fois en fait ce mot design thinking et la façon dont on peut disséminer le design thinking entre la côte Est et la côte Ouest? Sorry.
Well, as I was saying, I'm not sure that I would differentiate between the East Coast and the West Coast, but I've lived in many innovation centers in the United States, and there are some commonalities and some differences based on the regions that are really kind of interesting, Veronique. So let's look at, for example, San Francisco versus a place like Austin, Texas, which is emerging right now as one of the big innovation centers in the United States, or Boston. They all have these three interwoven elements. They have universities that are excellent. They have great government incentive programs, and they've attracted an ecosystem of really innovative companies. So there's ecosystem elements that are common to all of the different regions that we're talking about, but there are differences between them, and there are some distinctions also that define, I think, these innovation centers. And one of them is an incredible, and people don't talk about this very much, but it's an incredible depth of institutions and civil society. So they tend to be very politically engaged areas. They also socially and politically tend to be very, very tolerant of different lifestyles. So there's a culture in these places that gets going that's really interesting. And I think it does pertain to design thinking, because tolerance, openness to diversity, all of that kind of thing is about empathy in the end. And if you look at a place like Austin, you look at a place like San Francisco, they tend to be some of the most open and tolerant places in the United States. So on top of this economic and governmental and private sector infrastructure, a key ingredient, at least in the US, seems to be this rich civil society and a real acceptance of diversity and tolerance and people who are different than you are. San Francisco, really, in the end, is all about that. So if I were to distinguish what I've experienced the last 10 months at Autodesk in San Francisco, is something really kind of interesting. And that is, people just don't use design thinking to do stuff. They kind of use design thinking to be who they are. I mean, they're kind of integrating design thinking into their lives, right? So their lives are like, I was a new great engineering college, Olin College of Engineering in the United States. I was talking to the president last week, and he was saying, life is a maker project. And I think in San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, life is a design project, right? Everybody's constantly iterating on themselves, growing, changing, trying things, trying new stuff. There's a famous quote from an innovation expert, Tony Wagner, about learning. It's not who you are, but it's not what you know, but what you can do with what you know. And I think that's really important. But I would widen that when it comes to looking at innovation ecosystems and design thinking. In a place like California and Silicon Valley, it's not who you are, but what you can do with who you are, really. The impacts you can have in life. The kinds of changes and the kinds of challenges that you're willing to undergo continually as you live your life. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but I think it kind of approximates, yeah.
vais parler donc en français au début pour cette deuxième question. Randy a été provost de l'université de Philadelphie et il a mis en place une des stratégies les plus transformatives au niveau d'université dans le monde avec du design thinking. Il a écrit un chapitre entier dans un livre qui s'appelle « Comment créer les leaders d'innovation de demain ». Et dans ce chapitre, il explique, il démontre comment en fait l'université peut se transformer de l'intérieur avec en fait du design thinking. Et donc la question que je vais lui poser, c'est quelles sont ses recommandations pour les académiques que nous sommes, pour les dirigeants qu'on peut être, c'est de comment on peut transformer dans des milieux qui ne sont pas forcément faciles pour diffuser cette culture d'innover avec empathie. Je vais lui poser donc cette question. So you, as a provost of PhilaU, you have led one of the most transformative strategy with design thinking in a university. Mm-hmm. You've written a chapter in a book which is called All Creating Innovation Leaders. I
co-wrote the chapter with Veronique Elin.
Thank you. And in this chapter, you advised university how to embark on that journey. And you give very strong recommendations on how we can disseminate design thinking in academics, in universities. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, this is really a hard thing because in a way, disseminating design thinking at universities is more challenging than it is in companies, to be honest with you. Because universities have this very kind of industrial age, siloed, compartmentalized structure, right? Where knowledge is in these very thick silos. And it's really hard. Design thinking is all about integration. It's moving across silos. It's about proposing new ideas, thinking in new ways, bringing people together to test and to iterate. Universities just aren't set up to do that. And so it's a challenge to move around that. But what we did at Philadelphia University was really to try to redesign the entire university with the university community, looking at what should a university be in the 21st century. And we did that. So a few of the recommendations I would make, this was not an easy thing to do, but I think we were largely successful in doing it. Make it a maker project. Make it co-creative. Get everybody involved. Really look at what the faculty and the students, the administrators, what are their hopes and dreams, and bring those hopes and dreams into the bigger story about where you're going and what the university can be. And constantly create prototypes along the way that bring people together. I'll give you an example. We wanted our university, this new university, to be all about teaching innovation. Well, that's pretty amorphous. It's very hard to define what teaching innovation is about. So we decided early on that we would create a new college, a college of design, engineering, and business, right? And we would fuse all disciplines together into these three disciplines into this one college. And we would make the college so big that most of the students in the university would be in that college. And then we embarked on a series of projects, prototypes, so courses, curricula, projects. We even looked at the designing of the building for the new college. And each step along the way was a concrete opportunity to bring the community together into this broader vision about what teaching innovation can be. Learn from each project, and then based on that learning, start another project. Constantly also listen to what's happening during the change process. So we were instituting a massive change across the university. We wanted to make sure that everyone understood where we were going, and so we initiated an action research project along the way. And action research is simply, in a scientific way, polling constantly, trying to understand what your community is thinking about the change that's going on. Based on that, we learned lots of things. At one point, we learned that people didn't think that we were serious. They thought they could just wait it out. And if they waited long enough, it would all go away. And so we made a decision to create a concrete prototype and to drive the development of the curriculum for the new college by building a building. Originally, we were going to wait 3 years to build the building, but based on the action research, we decided we'd build it immediately, because that would be a concrete opportunity to bring the whole university together around this project of what the college should be. We couldn't build the building if we didn't know what the curriculum was. And frankly, the curriculum was so interactive with the building that the two things had to happen together. And so by concretely designing and creating that building, we drove a community understanding of where we were going. We helped put together the curriculum. We helped to think about how the spaces interacted to drive that curriculum. It created lots of necessity across the campus to rethink other programming as well. So by using a concrete opportunity like that to bring the community together around making something, in this case a building, we were able to create a common basis of understanding that really, really helped.
J'adore le slogan en fait de l'université de Philadelphie et je vais lui demander en fait I love the motto of Philadelphie. Can you remind us what is the motto of Philadelphie?
The power to do, the power to do, the power to act.
So it's really, I mean, it's a way to embody the culture which is claimed. Donc c'est leur slogan en fait incarne cette capacité de faire. Last question. So you are among the very few. I'm not going to say the happy few. I don't know, but you are among the really, really few that have made the move from academia to a private company, and not any kind of private company, to one of the most innovative company in the world, in one of the most innovating area in the world. So I would like, and I'm going to translate before you jump on this conversation, what would be, I mean, is it an easy move? And what would you be, you advise for people who want to move from a private, I mean, academia to a private sector? I mean, and is there any difference, and how can you feel and how do you live the differences between academia and the private company? Donc, I'm just going to translate quickly in French. Je vais lui demander, en fait, il est un des ceux, alors je ne vais pas dire en fait des heureux élus, puisque je ne sais pas si c'est vraiment un périple qui est heureux. En tout cas, parmi en fait les élus qui ont fait ce grand pas d'aller en fait de l'académique, de l'université à une des entreprises privées, et pas des moindres entreprises privées, une des plus innovantes dans une des parties du monde les plus innovantes. Et donc je lui pose la question de c'est quoi le challenge, what is the challenge, et puis quel est en fait son feeling par rapport en fait à ce grand changement.
Well, I would just first of all, I wouldn't say it's been easy, right? It's been thoroughly enjoyable. But it's been challenging. It's challenging coming from academia and moving into the private sector for a number of reasons. Part of it is just cultural. I mean, you have very different cultures in academic institutions than you do in corporations. But I've got to tell you, I was talking to Karsten Popp, who used to work at Autodesk for a long time, during the break. I've got to tell you, it was one of the best things I ever did. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. The people at a place like Autodesk are so consistently brilliant and creative. Such a pleasure, so stimulating to work with. And the company itself, I mean, it's just wildly, enthusiastically innovative constantly. So that aspect I have really enjoyed. And I would just encourage anybody, actually, I would say go from the private sector to the academia too, or academia to the private sector. We need each other. We need each other. I mean, there's been this kind of firewall, this separation between academia and the business world. I think it's been very destructive. And I think by bringing together these worlds, you know, we can go places that we haven't been before. So my recommendation would be, if you have the impulse to do it, I would do it. It's not necessarily an easy thing. The pace is different in the expectations around pace and pacing are very different in the corporate world. But the satisfaction that you get from working in an environment like Autodesk around incredibly smart people, where innovation is multi-layered. There's the innovation that comes from the leadership. Carl Bass, for example, he's an amazing man, very inspiring. But that kind of inspiration, that comes from a broad swath of leadership there. The innovation that comes from our research labs, the innovation that comes from formal programming around design thinking and integration. If you like design thinking, if you're interested in integrative forms of thinking and propositional thinking, what can be, what's possible, an innovation-driven company like Autodesk that is about imagining and designing and creating a better world, that's our motto. For me, it's mind candy. I love it. And so I would just say, for those of you who have the impulse to do it, do it. You know, take that extra energy, take the risk, and make it happen. Because for me, no looking back. I've loved it, and I love the company.
And my last question, so Autodesk is a software company, but there is a special, very special culture. There is a culture of empathic making. Mm-hmm. So I would like you to describe a little bit more this is the opposite of a best-in-class software company in France. So I think we really have to stress the key characteristic of the two very different cultures. Mm-hmm. Donc Autodesk a une caractéristique, c'est une entreprise de logiciels. Et pourtant, en fait, ils ont impulsé dans le monde le mouvement des empathic makers avec leur CEO. Et donc, je lui pose en fait la question qui est complètement aux antipades de comment nous, en tant que Français, on a créé en fait une entreprise aussi de logiciels extrêmement en fait successful. Mais quelle est en fait cette caractéristique extrêmement spécifique de la culture d'Autodesk, qui est de mélanger le tangible et l'intangible. So, what is the specific characteristic of the culture of Autodesk with this combination of tangible and intangible artifacts?
So, Autodesk is a company that, as I just said, its motto is imagine, design, create a better world. And it really internalizes that tremendously. And part of the way that it expresses that vision is through something we call the future of making things. The company is really all about making stuff, making things. So there's a bias toward action, toward making right away. And I think that bias toward making and creating visible products that everybody can kind of get around and look at and experience together and understand together and improve together is a big part of what makes it such an innovative and empathetically oriented company. The making piece, I cannot understate the importance of that. All right, so the entire company has internalized this rather complex idea of the future of making things, which has to do with how advanced software design, advanced manufacturing will change the way that we relate to our physical and virtual environments, including film. And again, this bias toward making things out there in the world, watching how our customers actually use our tools to make things, to make products, to make buildings, that creates this common understanding of the world that I think helps to drive empathy. And it's a really unique part of the Autodesk culture, and something that I've been really surprised at the depth of the way that the company has internalized this idea of making, of prototyping, of learning from what you've made in order to improve the product, but also to improve the company, to bring the company together, and to bring its customers together.
And the symbol is Pier 9, and the new buildings that you are creating at the moment in Boston that we visited last week. Can you I just want people to imagine how this can be embodied completely into a space which is very unexpected for a software company.
So as part of this future of making things and imagine designing and creating a better world, we really want to put our money where our mouth is, and we want to be able to show people what that means. First of all, I should say that our CEO, Carl Bass, he so wishes he could have been here, but he couldn't. He's a maker. He has some CEOs collect fancy cars. He collects fancy machinery with which to make things. So the company is always about trying to visibly show people what making means and how it can change the world. So we bought a giant pier that goes out into the San Francisco Bay, and we created what I call a temple of making things. It's our research lab for showing people how our advanced software tools can interact with advanced making tools in order to have really significant impacts on entire industrial sectors and the way that we interact with the world. Based on how successful Pier 9 was, and we'd love for all of you to visit it, we're creating another version of that in Boston right now called the Boston Build Space. And I don't know how many tens of thousands of square feet it is, but it's the same thing. Let's show people what making can be. Let's give people concrete demonstration about the future of making things that will bring them together into a common vision and create a common story about where we're going as a company in the future and where the world is going in terms of making, construction, and manufacturing. That's opening. It was supposed to open last week. I think it's opening now in about 2 months. Again, it's open to the public, so you'll be welcome to come, and I encourage you all to come. But yeah, Autodesk and making go hand in hand, and I think it's a really important part of our particular implementation of design thinking and empathy.
Last comment, conclude.
I don't, just thank you so much, Veronique, for being here, for allowing me to be here. And I just say in the end that Autodesk is very, very aware of this big experiment that's going on here at the D.school, creating a new kind of education. And we're really, really happy to support it and love what we see.